Welcome. I love the icon of the Transfiguration. The Transfiguration of Jesus on Mount Tabor, where he met Elijah and Moses in the company of his three favorite disciples. It's one of the principal 12 feasts of the Eastern Christian Church. In this icon we see Jesus, a central figure, surrounded by Moses and Elijah at each side, and the disciples in various positions of shock and one with his feet in the air with the surprise of the revelation. I read about the poet William Blake, who a couple of centuries ago prayed to be delivered from single vision and what he referred to as Newton's sleep. And by that Newton's sleep he meant the scientific worldview that only sees the world through one lens, one-eyed vision of the world. It's a good image to me, and it helps us understand the mystery that I'm about to speak about on the second Sunday of Lent, where we mark the Gospel of the Transfiguration. It's very easy to have a one-eyed vision, and the Gospel requires us to have full binocular vision. We associate in the Catholic world the Feast of the Transfiguration with the 6th of August. But here we are, before Easter and in the second week of Lent, commemorating this story, as I say, in the Gospel. That might seem at first quite puzzling, but on reflection, hearing the story of Jesus' Transfiguration this morning, the second Sunday of Lent, has the effect of framing the whole of Lent between two parallel stories, as Rowan Williams has described. A story of Jesus going into a lonely, mountainous place to pray, accompanied at a distance by three of his disciples, Peter, James, and John. A story in which Jesus prays in solitude and enters into a mystery so great that his friends shrink from it and have no words for it. Just a few verses prior to Mark's account of the Transfiguration, we read the line, "after 6 days," which of course evokes to me the story of the creation in the book of Genesis. So this is like a seventh day, like the Sabbath in Genesis. This is a seventh day of completion. And there in their presence, he becomes transfigured. His clothes, as the gospel writer puts it, his clothes became dazzlingly light, whiter than any earthly bleacher could make them. Elijah appeared to them with Moses, and they were talking with Jesus. What's all this about, you might say? Biblical scholars have seen the fulfillment of the Old Testament taking place in this scene, represented by the figure of the great prophet Elijah, expected to return on the eve of the Messiah, and the powerful figure of Moses, who saw God's glory on the mountain of Sinai and led the Israelites to freedom from Egypt to the promised land and revealed God's covenant to his people. Moses holds in his hands the tablets of the 10 Commandments. And here these two pillars of revelation meet with the promised Messiah, Jesus, and they talk. We understand now, at this early juncture of Lent, that we have the story of the Transfiguration and that it will be matched by the story of Gethsemane. And Jesus once again alone with 3 disciples apart from him, wrapped up in God. These incidents are different, and yet they have similarities. In both events, Jesus prays alone. In both, there is a revelation of the Father. In both, the 3 friends fall asleep, react in fear, and are not really with it in the scene. On Mount Tabor, Jesus hears the Father's voice confirming his mission and his destiny that will lead to the cross and resurrection. he is being confirmed and strengthened in this unusual path. The disciples then, and now you and I, who see this Jesus as he really is, we see a glimpse of his glory as the divine Son of God. And we see a promise of what we will become in God's new creation, won for us by Jesus Christ, and our call to holiness and sharing in God's very life in his divinity. Thomas Aquinas says that in order to see why the destiny of Jesus is leading to the cross and his death, we have to see the target at the end, for this route is only the direction of the arrow. The disciples had to see his transformed, glorified body beforehand to understand the Lord's passion. They will discover, as we must discover, Christ in his own body has opened up the path of glory that is the destiny of every baptized Christian and is the new creation promised. So in our discipleship throughout our lives, but in a Lent too, in a more heightened form, we have to weave the pattern of light and dark, joy and sorrow, anxiety and peace, suffering and healing, through the route Jesus has taken in order that we can follow into his glory. The gospel isn't so much about the inevitability of blood and pain and suffering, but rather the transformation, the new creation of human beings into the realm of divine light and glory, precisely through our humanity, our flesh and blood, and yes, even beyond the defeat of death and mortality, to resurrection in Jesus. So today, we see the transfiguration on the mountain is more than a hint of glory we are to share with Christ. But first, we must share with Christ and walk the path of being a disciple, taking up our cross and following him, even in this time of COVID, being faithful, persevering people of love and compassion for others. May God bless you.